The SEC chilling effect is real. We've seen the SEC ramp up enforcement actions and other actions against U.S. crypto companies and projects linked to U.S. crypto firms as the SEC tries to bring crypto within its regulatory perimeter. And Binance is responding here seemingly reasonably and saying, hey, we're cutting ties with some of our U.S. crypto involvement. This was first reported by Bloomberg, according to sources, later seemingly confirmed in a tweet by Binance CEO CZ. And it does suggest that the things that we've been seeing recently around, again, various regulatory enforcement actions is making Binance back off from the U.S. scene and take its ball overseas as much as it possibly can. Interesting development in the wake of some pretty high-profile regulatory news this week and last. Lots going on in this one. I saw Adam's hand. I'm going to toss it to him first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is exactly the type of response that you would expect from large exchanges that are not domiciled in the U.S., but which have kind of these like tentacular networks that reach into all kinds of different places, kind of all over the world.
Great
right?
word,
Crypto
Adam.
is global. Thank you. So, I mean, like, it's not at all surprising to see this. It is also a continuation of trend, which is that you're either a U.S. regulated company, which means that you deal with all of the advantages that come with it, which is access to the U.S. market, and the disadvantages that come with it, which is basically requiring permission for almost everything that you do. And to the extent that you become attractive, well, there's lots and lots of ways for them to go after you. So, I mean, the U.S. determines jurisdiction as far as this stuff goes really on two factors. One is where are the customers, the other is where is the company domiciled. Binance doesn't have any U.S. customers. They have Binance US to handle that part. So this is more about where's the company, which means, again, not a good thing if you're a U.S.-based crypto company. And we had been hearing some rumors about tokens too, but I don't think that actually got confirmed. So Jen, how about down to you?
Yeah, I know. You said this is exactly what we would expect from a firm like Binance. I think this is exactly what the SEC expects too. I think a lot of the recent SEC enforcement and action is expecting firms like Binance to react like this. This is what they're hoping that they're going to do. I was reading the story this morning. It says that they're looking to end relationships with U.S. banks and service firms. What was interesting to me is that the story said that they're considering delisting tokens issued by U.S.-based projects. I know, Adam, you just mentioned that Circle was mentioned in the story. CZ came out on Twitter and said that that's actually not the case. I have PTSD from the last 6 months, so I don't know what to believe. Not trying to FUD or anything. But David, as I hand it off to you, maybe you can help me think about this. What could this mean for Circle if they are delisted from Binance as a result?
Right. What to believe is definitely a question to ask here, because obviously, it's interesting. Whenever you make an announcement before taking the actual action, maybe you have goals other than just saying this is what we're going to do. And in this case, I'm not saying this is actually something that is reasonable to think, but Binance may be operating from some thought that they can threaten and intimidate U.S. regulators into stepping back to say, like, we aren't going to do business over here and you should somehow take that as a reason to take a lighter touch. I don't know. There is this larger narrative around the fact that this crackdown is going to push crypto activity out of the United States. But I don't think the SEC sees that as a bad thing. So it's not like they have any real leverage here. I don't know. We'll see. I honestly, the thing to keep in mind is that even if there is continued regulatory risk, the U.S. is going to continue to be a major, even maybe dominant market for something like Binance. So as they're saying, we're going to pull out of the U.S., definitely take it with a grain of salt. There's some complexity there. And Adam, I saw you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I think that it's hard. I think it's hard to look at what the regulators are doing and not come away with the idea that this is effectively a form of regulatory protectionism that is going to and is already probably having a net negative effect on people, right? You look at the large frauds that actually have occurred, they haven't succeeded in stopping any of those. You look at something like BUSD, for example, right? So Tether, of course, has long been treated as sort of like, hey, it's the giant thing that we all hate and want to go away because it has all of these problems within kind of the crypto space. It needs it, but the relationship with it is really strained. Part of that is because of the US. Part of that is because it's not regulated in the US, and there's been a lot of questions about what is going on there. The recent action against Paxos, though, which is the issuer of the white label token BUSD, they are not just a U.S. regulated entity, but they're actually a New York Department of Financial Services regulated entity. So it's kind of hard to find like a more like intense regulator than that. And in practice, what's happened now, or what is likely to happen, is that because BUSD looks like it's going to be wound down because the regulators are unhappy with the US-based issuer, Binance, which had moved away from tether-based dollar pairs within their very massive exchange, is probably going to go back to tether because that's the option that they have available to them. So again, like on the one side, here's intentions. On the other side, here's reality in terms of what's actually happening. The reality is that the regulators seem like they are going to be pushing back the world's largest exchange off of a US-based stablecoin and onto one that we know that there have been lots of sketchy issues with and lots of concerns around for a very long time. So, I don't think this is unintentional. I think it's unfortunate. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, the tether angle is a funny twist. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to read between the lines of the SEC action against Paxos and say, hey, we don't like your involvement with Binance. Notably, the other stablecoins that Paxos issues are not involved in this complaint at all. USDP, formerly Paxos Standard, similar dynamic, similar function, probably does exactly the same thing in terms of redemptions and whatnot that BUSD does. That's off the table. This is strictly about BUSD, and the implication is pretty clear, and CZ heard it loud and clear. He said, okay, if they're going to chip away at, again, the tentacles that reach into the US and make our lives miserable, fine, we're not going to deal with it anymore. And I don't think it's much of a threat. I think it's actually a concession to US regulators that said, okay, I tip my cap to you, sirs. You won this round. We'll see what happens next. Again, I think David's point about, announcing it before you do it is very salient. So we'll see what happens there. But in terms of them being able to exert some leverage by saying, we're not going to be exposing ourselves to even US crypto firms, not to mention US crypto investors, that seems like quite the win for Gary Gensler's approach on this one.